Hi guys, and thank you for all of your love and support on YouTube and Twitter, and also for all of those guys who are buying me coffee. Recently I just received a nice comment on YouTube. It's by Joanna, so let me read it out for you guys. So she says that, hello, it's really very nice for you to provide this kind of lectures. Thank you that you love my lectures. Then she writes, please, a small request, a small project, hotel or something with bookings made with Django. Okay, I get it. So we can understand the fundamentals of how everything works. It doesn't have to be big, but we at least know how booking button is disabled in case room quantity is 0, for example. Please, we are tired with tutorials about basics and not project practice. Thank you so much for dropping in the message. I really appreciate all of the messages, and I would surely love to create this kind of a project. Till it happens, let me at least get you started. And this is not just for you, but for the community in general. So what happens is, one of the key skills that you need to have as a web developer is all about your databases. So I would definitely advise you to go ahead and learn a little bit more about databases, and how you can create different queries, and how you can have different kind of relationships, like one to one, one to many, many to many kind of database relationships. But for now, for this project at least, I may not get the time to create the views and templates and those kind of things, but at least we can get started. So let me show you the logic about how we can approach this kind of a problem, and how we can divide the bigger problem into small sub problems, and that's it. So let's get started. Let us get started with this bookings project. Now please keep in mind that this is going to be a very short project. You can imagine this to be like more of a code sprint rather than an entire project. And for this project, I will show you how you can implement the core functionality, and we will not be covering views and templates because that's going to be a very big project. Well, first thing, before starting with any project, one of the tricks is just to sit back and visualize. So what I mean to say is, just imagine that you are a hotel owner. Then what entities would you need inside your hotel? Now, since you are a developer, you can think of these entities as your models. Now, for listing all of these entities and models, you don't have to be precise. You just have to come up with rough ideas. So let us see with which entities or models did I come up with. So the first thing is, obviously we need a guest. Second, if we have a guest, we also need to have a room. And if we have to sell a room, then we need to have the booking details. And if we have the booking details, we also need to have an order. So this is how I came up with different models. Now, for different developers, they may have different models. You don't have to be precise every time. The first thing is just getting started, and then you can refine your design as you go ahead. If you have a very hard time thinking about different entities or models, so what I normally do is, so let us just go to Google, and here we can search for free hotel booking templates. So this is one way where you can find different templates, and after we have the template, then we think about the different entities or the different models which are required to implement the design. Now I know one very good hotel booking design, so let me take you directly over there, and that comes from Bootstrap. So let me just search for Get Bootstrap. So this is the famous website of Bootstrap. Now let me click on themes, and here we have a lot of different themes, and we have one hotel booking theme right over here. Let us go to the live preview. Let me close this one, and here I want to have the theme for our hotels. So this is how I normally do. I first have a look at the different HTML templates, then I look at different elements. For example, the element that you can see right over here. So this is going to be an HTML form. So I know what kind of entity I need to create for this template. But right now, let us go back to our basic problem, and that is about the booking button. So let us see if we can find a perfect template for our use or not. Let me go to listings right over here, hotels, and here we have one page for room detail. Now at this point we don't have to implement all of this functionality, but let me just take you through of different elements or the different entities that we can create for a room. So first, obviously, as you can see right over here, we can create an image slider. The next thing is we can also create a model for our pricing. Next, we can create forms for our check-in and check-out and different things. And here finally we have the button continue to book. But in case the room is booked from the check-in to the check-out date, at that time we need to disable this button. So let us see how we can do all of these things. Now again, let me repeat, we are not going to build the entire functionality. Rather, I will be showing you the basic core logic. So let us go back to our drawing board, and here we have a lot of different models. But right now we just need two models, and that is for room and bookings. So let us go and create a new Django project, and then we can implement this functionality. Here let me create a new folder by the name of bookings mini. Let us go inside that folder, and here we can create a new virtual environment. So we can say poetry, I want to initialize, package name, okay, version, okay, description, no, okay, no, no, yes. So now let me clear up the screen. Let us also install Django. So we can say poetry add Django. Once Django is installed, let us go inside our shell. So we can say poetry shell. Let me clear up everything. And here let us create a brand new Django project. So I can say Django admin start project web. Now in this case, I simply want to name my project as web. You can name anything that you want. Now let us open up this project inside our Visual Studio Code. So here I am. Now the next thing is, let us create an application for our bookings. So again, let me open up my terminal, and let me just zoom inside for you. And here we can say that python manage.py start app booking. So now we have a new application called as booking. Now let me open up my sidebar, and here it is. The first thing is, let us register this new application inside our settings. So let us go to web and settings. Now I don't need all of these comments. Let me take them out, and let us scroll a little bit right over here. So inside our install applications, let us write the name of our application, bookings. Yes, I want to use black. Let me close this file. Let me go to my bookings application, and from here I want to open up my models file. Now inside the models, we basically need two models to get started. The first model is for the room, and the second one is for the booking. Let me take out this comment. I don't need this one, and let us create one class by the name of room, and we have to inherit from models.model. Right now, let us keep the model very simple. We just have to see how we can implement the functionality. So here, let me create one field for the title of the room, and I can say that I want to have a simple character field, and let's have the maximum length as 250 characters. And then we can have one more field for the description, and we can set it to our text field. So this is going to be our simple model for our rooms. Next, let us create one more model for the bookings. So we can say that class of booking, this also has to inherit from models.model. Oh, let me get the spelling right. Here, let us pause for a moment and let us think what different fields that we need to have inside the booking. So the first thing is, we want to book a room. So obviously we need a field for the room, but this is going to be a foreign key kind of a relationship. One room can have multiple bookings for different dates, right? So we need to create a many to one kind of a relationship. That means we can have one room, but that room can have multiple bookings. And the only constant is they should have different check-in and check-out dates. So here let us create a field for room, and this has to be our foreign key. So let me and we want to bound this field to our model of room, and the next parameter that we need to specify is on delete. So on delete we simply want to cascade, so we can say on delete dot cascade. So basically we are trying to say that if this room is deleted, at that time we also want to delete the booking as well. So that's what this models.cascade is doing. The next thing is we need our check-in and check-out date. So let us create one more field for our check-in date. Now let us see what kind of field do we want for our check-in date. So here we can either use the date time or the date field. Right now, for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to use the date field, but you can use the date time field as well. So let me go ahead and use the date field. Let me copy and paste, and this one is going to be for our checkout date. The next thing is we need to have a constraint, and that constraint goes like this, that we can have a single room booking for a particular check-in and checkout date. That means for a particular booking, we want all of these parameters to be unique, and we can enforce this at our database level. So let me show you how we can do that. For this, we have to override the meta class. So let me create a class called as meta. Metadata simply stands for all of the different additional data that we can pass to our model. So here we want to create a constraint, and the field name that we want to override is called as unique together. So I can say that unique together. Now this has to be a list, and inside this list we need to create one more list for all of the parameters that we want to be unique together. So the first parameter is our room, the next one is for our check-in date, and the last one is for our checkout date. Now what's happening is we are simply inheriting from models.model, and we are overriding the class meta from the models class that we just inherited. Now this parameter is going to create an additional database constraint for us. So till now we have created two models. The first one is for the room, the second one is for the booking, and for the booking we have many to one relationship with our room model. Now let us come to the core functionality of how we can create a method by which we can check if the room is available or not. So this is the core functionality that our entire project is all about. So let me take all of these things up. Now inside of this class, I simply want to create a convenience method. So let us create a method called as isAvailable right over here. And I want this method to be static. So let me use our annotations for static method. Now let us see what different parameters this method should accept. And inside this method, we simply want to check if a particular room is available between our check-in date and our checkout date. That's why this method should accept a room. Type has to be of the room. Second, this also has to accept the check-in date and our checkout date. So let me just copy from here and let me paste right over here. Now before proceeding ahead, let us also add the right data types for our check-in date. Now if we refer our bookings model, the type is the date field. So let us include the type hinting for this one as well. But for that, we need to import something. So right on the top, I want to import date time. Now let us go back to our method. Here we can say that this check-in date is the type of date time dot date. Now let us also change the parameter name, because I think this check-in and this check-in is going to be slightly confusing. So let's call this as from date. So this is going to be the from date, and the next that we want to check is the to date. Now again, this also has to be of the type of date time dot date, and our method is simply going to give back a boolean. That means if the room is available, then this method will return true, otherwise it will return false. Now before writing our functionality or the exact database query, first let us set the right context. For example, if we have a booking like this, so we have a booking for room number 1, and the check-in date is 1st of February and the checkout date is 3rd February. So just imagine that we already have this booking, and next we have a customer who wants to check if this room is available from 5th of February to 7th of February. So what we have done is we have simply set the context for our query. Now let me take everything up because we need to focus on this method. The next thing is, before writing the actual query, let us divide the query into small steps. Now this habit of dividing a bigger problem into smaller steps is always a good idea. So first let us write the steps in words, and then we will translate the steps from words to our Django database API. So the first step is we need to see if we have this room inside our database or not. So the step number 1 is we simply have to check this room inside our bookings table. The next step would be we simply have to check our from date to our check-in date. So let us write the step number 2. We have to check for the check-in date. And similarly, the next step is we simply have to check for the checkout date as well. The last step is we also need to flip our true and false values. So first let me write this step, and it will be clear when we write the actual query. So here let us write the query, and for the query let us use the built-in model manager. So we can say that we want you to go to our model of booking, and from there to objects, and there to filter. Now we want to use the method of filter because we have multiple conditions for which we want to filter. Now the first thing that we want to filter is obviously our room. We simply have to check if that room is booked by someone else or not. So the first filter condition would be room is equal to room. Now if we scroll down for a moment, here we can see that we have a field for room right over here. Now what we want to do is we simply want to check for this room and compare that room with the room inside our bookings. So right over here, as you can see, the first filter parameter is for the room. The next thing is we simply have to check if this particular room is booked for our check-in date to our checkout date. So let's see how we can do that. And we can do that by writing a slightly advanced version of our database API. So here we want to say that the check-in date for our bookings model should be greater than or equal to our from date. Now don't worry if you don't understand this query. First let us write it down, and then we can trace this query word by word and line by line. The next thing that we want to filter is for our checkout date. So here we can say that we want to have our checkout date, but our checkout date should be less than or equal to our to date. Now let us try to analyze our query word by word and line by line. So remember, we already have set a context. So we already have a booking for room number 1. So is this condition true or false? So this condition is true, right? Because we have an existing booking for the exact same room. Now let us try and evaluate the second condition. So the second condition says that we want to check if our check-in date is greater than or equal to our from date or not. Now what's happening in this case is our check-in date is 1st of February. Now is 1st of February greater than or equal to 5th of February? So the answer is no. So this parameter would be evaluated to false. Now let us move to the third condition, and the third condition goes like this. We want to check if our checkout date is less than or equal to our to date. Now the to date is 7th of February and our checkout date is 3rd of February. Now is 3rd of February less than or equal to 7? So the answer is true. Now what happens inside the filter operation is it is going to filter by AND condition. So let me explain what's going to happen. So what's going to happen is we have a true condition and we have a false condition. True and false gives us a false, right? For the next parameter, again we have the same condition. We have a false and we have a true. So false and true again gives us a false. So that means we don't have a room that matches this criteria. So the entire query will simply result into a big false statement. Now what happens in actual is Django does not evaluate in terms of true and false. This query is evaluated by our database. Now what happens is, if we have a room that matches all of this criteria, then we get the room back. And the return of this method is actually a query set. So what happens is, if we have the room, then we get a query set. So remember, query set is a list like kind of a structure, and inside the query set here we will have our room number 1. But in our case, what's happening is, we don't have a room that matches all of this criteria. So in that case, we simply get back an empty query set. So the next thing that we want to do is, we simply want to convert our query set into true and false values. And fortunately, it's very simple to do that. And just for that, we have an inbuilt method called as exist. So here we can simply chain our methods and we can call the exist method. So now let us again reevaluate the entire query. Do we have a room that matches our check-in and checkout date? So the answer is no. And since the answer is no, this filter method is giving back a empty query set. Now we are simply converting that empty query set into true and false by using this method right over here. So this entire query will evaluate to a big false. That means we don't have a room for our given criteria. And since we don't have a room that matches the criteria, that means the room is available. And for this, we need to flip from false to true. So that means not false, that means it's true. Yes, this room is available. And the last thing is, we simply have to return back our values. Next, let us write a bunch of tests to see if our criteria is working or not. So again, let me open up my sidebar and let us go to our test.py file. I don't want this comment, and here I want to import. So from our models file, we want to import our room and our booking model. And here let us create a class and call it as booking date test. Now this has to inherit from our test case. Let us define a method right over here called as test valid booking date. This has to accept one parameter of self. For testing, let us create a room. So we can say that let us create our room number 1, and we can say rooms.objects.create. The first field for the room is for our title. So we can say that title is going to be by the bay. The next field is for the description. So we can say this is going to be luxurious room by the bay. Let me just copy and paste this one, and this time this has to be our room number 2, and this time let it be by the sea, and this also needs to be by the sea. Next, let us create a bunch of variables for our dates, and since we want to create dates, first let us go and let us import our date time, and here let us create a variable called as today, and this has to be our datetime.now, and from now I simply want to extract the date. Right now just imagine that we have a date over here and the date is 1st of February. Next, let us create one more date which is 2 days in the future. So let us call it as today plus of 2, and this has to be our today, and we need to add the time delta, and this time days would be 2. Now since the earlier date was 1st, so in this case the date would be 3rd, and let us create one more date which would be 4 days in the future. So let me copy and paste, and this has to be today plus of 4, and this has to be 4, and this becomes our 5th. Next, let us create our booking. So here I can say that my booking.objects.create, the first parameter was our room, so let us create a booking for our room number 1. The next parameter was for our check-in date. Suppose we want to check in today, and the next one is for our checkout date. Now this could be today plus of 2. Now let me save all of these things and let me scroll a little bit down so it's easier for you to understand what's happening. So what we did was we created 2 rooms. So the first room is by the bay and the second room is by the sea, and then we created a bunch of different dates, and then we have created a booking. Now this booking is for our room number 1. So let me put up a comment right over here, and our check-in date is 1st of February and our checkout date is 3rd of February. So what we have done is we have created the context for our test. Next, let us go ahead and write the actual condition. So we can say dot self dot assert equal, and the first parameter would be from my bookings model. I want you to use the static method called as is available, and let us pass a bunch of parameters for this one. Here let us check if the exact same room is available or not. Now since we have already booked this room, that means this method should give us a false. So first let me write this condition and then we can pass the different parameters. So let us pass the different parameters. So we want to check for the room equal to our room number 1. The next is the from date. So we want to check from today, and the next one would be our to date. So that would be today plus of 2. Now let me take all of these things in different lines so it's much easier for us to see what's happening. So here we are trying to check if this exact same room is available or not. And since this room is not available, we are expecting an answer of false. So this would be false and this would be false. That means our condition would be true. And let us open up our terminal. Let me clear this up and we can write the test by saying python manage.py and test. Oh, we have an error, and that error is right over here. No module named bookings Django. So let us see what's happening. Let me open up our settings file, and yes, the name has to be booking and not bookings. And I also forgot to put my comma. Let me close this file and let me open up my terminal one more time. Let us clear everything up and let us try to run the test one more time. Oh, so this time we have one more error, and the error is no such table booking room. And that's true, and that's because we did not run our migrations. So again, let me clear up everything and let us say python manage.py make migrations. And since we have our migrations, let us try and migrate. So we have our migrations as well. Now let us try to run our test and let us see if we are running or not. And this time we actually have a test and our test is passing. So let us go back to our test and let us see if we can test for some more criterias or not. Let me also put a bunch of separators so it's much easy for us to understand what's happening. Let me put one right over here and let me put one right over here as well. Next, let us write a test for the exact same room number 1, but this time let us use the dates for which that room is available. So let me copy all of these things and let me scroll a little bit up and let us paste it right over here. So here the from date should be today plus of 2 and the to date should be today plus of 4. Now since this room should be available from today plus 2, that means from 3rd of February to 5th of February, that means we are expecting a true right over here. So let me save the condition. Again, let us go to our terminal. Let me clear up everything and let us try to run the test one more time. And this time also you can see that everything is running fine. If you want to be sure if our test is running or not, so here let us write false. Now again, let us go back to our terminal and let us try to run the test one more time. So this time, as you can see, we have a failure and the failure is happening at line number 41. So now we can know that our test is actually running. So let us go back to the right condition. This has to be true. Let me write a bunch of comments so that everything is very easily understood. The from date was 1st of February. The to date was from 3rd of February. And for the second time, again, this was our room number 1. The from date was 3rd of February and the to date was 5th of February. Now this time let us try and check if the same room, that is room number 1, is available from 1st of February to 5th of February. Now in that case the answer should be false again because the room is booked from 1st of February to 3rd of February. So let me copy all of these things. Let me paste it right over here and let us scroll up. The from date should be today, and today is not 3rd, today is going to be 1st of February, and the room is not available, so we want to match with a false statement. Now let us go back to our terminal. Let me clear up everything and let us test one more time. And as we can see, this condition is satisfied as well. Now let us write one last test. Now remember, we already have a booking and that booking is for the room number 1. But let us try to see if the room number 2 is available from 1st of February to 3rd of February. And since we don't have a booking for room number 2, in that case, we should get a true condition. So let me copy this test right over here. Let me scroll to the bottom and let me paste it right over here. So this time we want to check for our room number 2. This has to be room number 2. And since we don't have a booking for room number 2, this has to be true. And let us open up our terminal and let us try to run the test for the last time. As you can see, our tests are running and everything is matching. Well, this brings us to the end of this tutorial. So what we did was we simply saw how we can implement the basic logic, and that we did right over here. So this database query that we have right over here, so this forms the basic core logic for our implementation. The next thing that you can do is you can use this logic inside your views and templates. So what you can do is you can always check if the room is available or not, and if the room is available, then you can display the button, or you can display a message saying that fully booked, check back again. Well, that's it from me for this video, and I will catch you in the next one.